EFED Podcast, the podcast exploring our fantasy wrestling hobby, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real. I'm your host, Mikey Unlikely, and I'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Atomic Dropcast Network. Hey everybody, episode 34 of the EFED Podcast. Welcome. Thanks for joining us if you're an old listener. Thanks for checking us out if you're a new listener. Really appreciate you taking the time to dig our EFED Podcast here on Atomic Dropcast Network. Guys, today we've got a huge show for you. We've got my good friend Seth Seth is on the show today, the handler of 1.5 billion characters. We've also got the new question of the week, the EFED Spotlight, of course, and some EWT's updates. We've got all of that, guys, much more, and some fun stuff coming up for you here on the show and on the future shows, so keep your eyes peeled for those. However, as always, you can interact with the show on Twitter over at the EFED Podcast. We have a Discord where we have our own little EFED community where you can get in with people who play Angle, Caw, Roleplay, 2K, NEKs, all days. That was pretty slick. Yeah, check it out over at the Discord. The link is in the Twitter profile. You can hop in there and chat it up with us. Guys, if you'd like to be interviewed for the show, we are still booking interviews. Go ahead and shoot me a DM over on the Twitter machine or send an email to mikey@efedpodcast.com. Special shout out to our guys over at the SWA on Facebook. Thanks for your support, brothers. And before we get into the show, I would really appreciate it if you guys would take a minute to check out our sponsors. Not only do they help support the show each and every week financially, but they're guys who listen to the show. They're people who are in our EFED community. They're people who are trying to have fun in the game, and a lot of them have different creative outlets. So let that freak flag fly and support our brethren and sisterin. Is that a word? We've also got the Patreon over at patreon.com/EFED Podcast. Yes, the show is completely free every Tuesday, but you can get it 2 days early and a bunch of other awesome benefits over at patreon.com/EFED Podcast. All right, guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, and let's hear a word from our sponsors. It's time for the question of the week. In this week's EFED Podcast question of the week, I'm meeting up with another handler for lunch today. Would you ever meet up with someone else in the game, or have you? And I'll just go ahead and put out there, I had a great time meeting up with a good friend Warren on Saturday. For the first time, we had lunch. I had a brewski. It was a great time. Really appreciate him taking the time to meet up with me. At Ryan Terror THR, I have met and dated someone from the game. It didn't last long due to distance. She was in New York and I'm in Georgia. I think we've all had a situation similar in our younger days. At Angel Panic 1, hell yeah, especially if they're hot. Just kidding, maybe. At Warren Fitz 45, it should be a fun time during a crazy time in wrestling. So far I've met user poets at Referee Ben Hall and now you. At Scoot Stuvens Krang. At Auto-Tune My Penis, I've met Notorious 513 at Estrella Louise and Jerry with an I. And I will be meeting a hell of a lot more before it's said and done. To be honest, I'm only in the game for my friends, and if I can't take that friendship into the real world, then I don't want it. Nice. Awesome. I love that we get to meet each other and have real friendships in real life beyond just the internet friendships. At El Perro Ward, to be honest, I would love to meet everyone, but mainly Whammy Bar, Desmond Masters, and Can't Kill the Soul. But if anyone in Dallas, hit me up. At Titanus Sam, I would definitely love to meet some people. Time is easily my biggest issue at the moment. I'm typically co-piloting our car with my husband for work or typing up promos for EWC. At Rick, I'd only meet you, Mikey. Only you. Oh, geez. At IVOPW, I have. It was the best sex I ever had, too. Whoa. Can't say I've been there. At Caloeasy2220, because of where I am, it's not a likely thing. However, I do know someone that has said they'd look me up if they're ever in my area, which would be interesting. At Firestorm Blazin', James Sino. I have good friends in the game, and I would love to meet the guys that play one wrestling icon and charismatic star. We have history and got to know each other over the years of the game. I'd also like to meet the person who plays at Shield Mother and apologize for my behavior. Uh-oh. At the Ganja Goddess, I'd love to meet some handlers. Met a few in the past. First one was a really bad experience, but I didn't let that stop me. I did meet Ron Hall once. That was a pretty bad experience too, trust me. At the Dropkick King, to date, I've met 4. Great experiences every time so far. One of them had to explain to their wife who I was, so that was fun. That's awesome. Let's see what happened over on the Discord side of things. What kind of answers did we get? At Queen Linda's OG, I've still met more handlers than you. I'm working on that, Linz. I'm up to 19 now. I've met 19. Yes. At Mongo the Destroyer, currently, no. I'm hiding my return to EFEDing from my wife. Were I single? Sure. There's a few guys I've known for nearly 20 years who are probably not serial killers, or at least would rather not serial kill the guy running their hobby. You never kill the fed head, that's obvious. Can't win a belt if the fed head's dead. At Jakey, I would continue to be open to meeting more, and just to get out there in front of the inevitable, anyone who answers, haha, I wouldn't meet anyone in this hobby, that's lame. Shut up. You're not cool. You're probably the type of person no one would want to meet anyway. You got that right, Jakey. There's been a few who have not wanted to meet up, but I think the vast majority of people are down. At Giant Bilba, of course. I've met you before, Mikey, and I've met others. Life is a little more hectic now than it used to be, but I can find the time. If I can find the time, then I'm down to hang. At OG Judge Megan, I would. Thanks, Meg. At Ron Hall, Highlander, 4H, I've met others, and I'm open to continuing to meet others. And others. And others. At Buy My Book, yes, that's Pete. Yes, including the one you're meeting for lunch today. That's fun. We're like EFED Eskimo buddies. At Seth is Burns, yes, I've met 2 people. Mikey and Marcus. I haven't been murdered either time, so they worked out well enough. And in fact, we had some great burgers. If you're ever in the Seattle area, check out Katsu Burger. At Alex Smiley, off the top of my head, I can recall meeting 3 people from the game, possibly a 4th in the near future. Found out recently a fellow handler lives in the same city as me. I'm always up to meeting new folks. Awesome, man. Oh, we done with that? Hashtag fuzz. I've met one other handler. Then he moved out of state, and since then I've heard rumblings about the Chicagoland area being a hotbed of fedders, so it's just a matter of time. It really is. I know about 5 people just off the top of my head in the Chicago area. I've met 2 handlers, Mikey Unlikely and Faith Lahane. Both experiences were fantastic. I had a chance to meet Ben Halcomb, but I chickened out, which I regret. I'd be up to meeting more, but I'm a weirdo, so I'm sure many others would rather not meet me. Bobo, you were a great experience. I recommend you to anybody. At Irwin109, always welcome to the idea. Only chance I had just happened to be a day I was trapped at work. At MDG Wrestling Games, Warren, again, meet people who play the game on the internet? That sounds like a great idea if you want to get killed and served for dinner. But I guess it's fine as long as you don't bring your wife. And we both brought our wives. How about that? TEFP producer, that's Brian. After meeting my first Mikey, I'd say sure. But after meeting my second, Ron Hall, nah. Ron Hall McDonald. That's my guy. All right, everybody, thank you very much for answering this week's EFED Podcast Question of the Week. You can answer it next week right there at the top of the Twitter profile. It's always pinned to the top. And I've got a pretty interesting one lined up for next week. It's going to make for a weird show, but it's going to make for a fun Twitter post.
This is the handler of the majestic Crimson Lord, and you are listening to the EFED Podcast.
And it's time for another EFED Podcast Spotlight segment. And this week, the spotlight is on Carnage Wrestling. You can find them at carnagewrestling.com. And what Carnage Wrestling is a role-play fed. They've got a 4,000 word limit, and they are a hybrid fed with shows every 2 weeks, pay-per-views every 2 months, And the cycle is 3 TV shows and then a pay-per-view. They do currently have 5 active championships: the Carnage World Championship, the Ultraviolent Championship, Tag Team, and the Baltimore City Championship, as well as the Openweight Championship, which is a fun title that changes based on angles in segments on the show. And that's interesting because with a roleplay fed, to have one title that switches based on angles, you can have some fun with that. Website link, carnagewrestling.com. You can also find them on Twitter at Carnage Wrestling, without the G at the end. Carnage Wrestling. Right now, they got about 35 wrestlers or so. Some of the top people are Amber Ryan, Mac Bain, Catalina Cortez and Christopher Marlowe, Kyra Johnson, Trent Steele, Godly Ken Davison, Metaxia, Angel Panic, The Empty, and Jack Michaels. Guys, check out Carnage Wrestling. They're an up-and-coming roleplay fed, 4,000 word limit. If you're into it, they got plenty of wrestlers, plenty of titles, and looks like a fun challenge. Check it out, carnagewrestling.com. Pretty soon they're going to be moving over to carnagewrestling.freeforums.net if you are hearing this much later. We're really excited to have Carnage on the show, excited to support them, and if you would like your fed to be an EFED Podcast Spotlight, get at us on Twitter in the DMs at the EFED Podcast. carnagewrestling.com. All right, guys, the EFED Podcast is very happy to announce its brand new partnership over on Facebook with the Social Media Wrestling Association. The Social Media Wrestling Association, along with its 16,000 member strong influence page known as Generational Wrestling Society, has proven to be the true revolutionary EFED company of Facebook. The SWA welcomes written, video, and audio promos for its talent, as well as results provided in live 2K audio commentary and written results. The SWA is more than just an EFED. With GWS, all areas of the wrestling community are covered. From belt collectors, wrestling news, trivia, and podcasts, and EFEDs. Check them out on Facebook at Social Media Wrestling Association and Generational Wrestling Society. You can give a search for both. Once you join both, you'll be glad to become associated with the society. And we're going to be posting our show on Facebook exclusively on the SWA and GWS sites, and we're very happy to have announced this partnership with the SWA, and you can hear about it here every week. So guys, go check them out. Social Media Wrestling Association on Facebook. Update 2020. We've got an update on EWTs.com. Unfortunately, it's not the best news, everybody. We were slated to open up the EWTs store on July the 1st, 2020. Unfortunately, we have spoken with our vendor, and because of the COVID situation, they are way backed up between work issues and just having such a huge demand for t-shirts during the COVID situation. Unfortunately, we're going to be pushing back for just a few weeks. We're looking at a mid-July open now, but we are still accepting designs for new t-shirts. We're going to be getting them all up on the website as soon as we can so that when it comes opening time, we can get your stuff out the door as quickly as possible. Please stay with us. We appreciate your patience. We've apologized for the issues. We never intended or expected this to happen, but we are sticking with our vendor. We looked at some other options, and unfortunately, this is the best way for us to move forward at this time. So we are pushing back to mid-July, but we are still planning to open. We are still accepting designs, and we're still going to be putting new ones up on the Twitter machine on the daily. Check out at eWrestlingTees on Twitter, EWTees.com, EFEDTees.com, or EWMerch.com. They're all going to take you to the same place. We're going to be opening up that store here mid-July. All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the EFED Podcast interview series. This week, we're joined by a very special friend of mine, someone I've met in real life, and someone I've been playing the game with for a number of years now. Seth Emoto. He has been a handler in feds such as the FWO, ACW, EPW, NFW, all of the W's, and DefianceWrestling.com, of course, where we've been handling together for some time. Seth, thank you very much for coming on the show. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. It's Friday as we're recording this, and thank God.
That's right. Friday night, we're going to have a good time here on the podcast, having a few drinks on my end, and DoorDash on your end.
Yeah, which is still not cooperating with me, but I'm almost done finally. So.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on the pod. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, of course. No, I've been listening since the very beginning. Like you said, I've been waiting for this a while. So, and of course, I'll be absolutely ill prepared, and we'll forget everything that I'm going to do in the next hour and a half. So get ready for a lot of ahs, and awkward pauses, just like that.
Brian will cut all of that out until you offend him, and then he'll stop cutting that out. So just don't offend Brian.
Okay. All right. Brian, you asshole. Oh, wait. Never mind.
Well, awesome, man. Well, hey, let's get started at the very beginning, Seth. How did you get into professional wrestling?
So I was about 13 or 14, kind of like right in the middle of the Attitude Era.
Okay.
I'd kind of been, like, I knew who some wrestlers were, like, when I was a kid, like Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, like Ric Flair, like all the big people everybody knew, but I didn't really start watching it till I was probably about 13. I was staying at a friend's house, and there was a segment with D-Generation X where I think Shawn Michaels was basically trying to get a girl to, like, take her top off, and then I'm like, okay, what are we watching now?
I'm in.
Yeah, so I'm like, let's do this. But, actually watch the show and see, like, the actual wrestling. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So then I started to kind of get more and more into it over time, where it's like, I go and hang out with my best friend at the time, and then we go watch Monday Night Raw, then subsequently SmackDown. So that was kind of a cool period to get in there when wrestling was kind of at arguably its hottest.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And so you said you were a teenager at the time. Who were your favorites? Were you a rebellious teenager and digging Stone Cold?
Actually, yeah. Stone Cold. I'll go with the ones that everybody will still say, like Stone Cold. It's like, wait, he's giving everybody the finger. He's beating the crap out of people, and he's probably getting paid millions of dollars for it. I'm like, dude, where do I sign up?
The dream.
Yeah, so Stone Cold was among my favorites, and then as I kind of got to see more wrestlers, then eventually I started watching a little bit of WCW here and there. Chris Benoit was really good with his work, not discounting anything that happened, after. And
I hate that we have to have this conversation, but yeah, I loved Chris Benoit. I thought he was a great wrestler. He was great in the storylines he was in. Nothing. Yeah, you can't appreciate Benoit without being like, well, shit, he fucked up.
Yeah, absolutely, and it sucks. But I will say, during that time when I was watching, he was just somebody that I really just enjoyed was his physicality, just the way he worked in the ring was top notch, second to none. He could work the same match convincingly with somebody huge. He could work the same match with somebody more his size and stature, but just kind of the fight that he brought out of a lot of people was really awesome. So that's when I kind of started wrestlers weren't necessarily at the top like Stone Cold and The Rock, where just about everybody liked him, and then I kind of gravitated.
Oh yeah, you started getting into the mid card and the guys you really start to get to know the characters.
Yeah, exactly. And so Benoit, so the entire group of radicals when they jumped ship to WWF was that was one of the coolest moments for me as a wrestling fan, when him, Malenko, Saturn, Guerrero all jumped ship. That was, I'll never forget that, because I ran to my stepdad is a wrestling fan too, and immediately when I saw that, I ran upstairs to go tell him, oh my god, dad, these wrestlers jumped ship, and he's going, no, they're in WCW. I'm like, no, they're in WWF right now. Go look. And then he turns on the TV and he's like, oh, well, shit. There they are.
That's awesome. And I love those moments where it just, for you, it's just the most exciting time. Oh my God, it happened.
Yeah.
So you were a WWF guy, but then you started watching some WCW. Yeah. Where did you go from there?
So eventually, I found ECW as well. Was on some local 4 a.m. channel I'd never heard of on a crappy, barely working color TV. But it was still pretty awesome though, because it was like, that's when I think it was a tag team match with like, I don't remember everybody that was in it, but RVD and Sabu. And I'm like, oh crap, these guys are awesome too. And I'm like, wait, they don't do this on regular TV. Like, who are these guys? I'm like, oh, they don't have a budget. Maybe that's why they can like jump off, break all these tables and stuff. And
Yeah, because they don't have fireworks and everything else.
yeah, they don't have pyro, but then they're playing like Metallica for their theme music. I'm like, whoa, these guys are cool. I admittedly, before I grew up and realized what a garbage wrestler he really was, I really enjoyed Sandman. Just coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Like just the whole spectacle, the entrance was awesome, and him just beating the shit out of people and stumbling through his probably the 3 wrestling moves he was sober enough to remember was amazing.
He did fall down a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta love some Sandman. And that's awesome. So you hit the trifecta, WWE, WCW, and ECW in the late 90s.
Yeah, and it was just, I was kind of everywhere, and for me, like, just, I think I can find good wrestling just about anywhere, I think. Just because there's wrestlers I like in different organizations that people may not have heard of, that it's like, oh, okay, hey, this guy's cool, he's one to watch. And so, and
you got to be the insider of your little group.
Kind of, yeah. It was like, oh, dude, you should go check out this guy. Wait, who? And and name some obscure wrestlers, and then later on, my friends would be like, oh, hey, we checked out that guy. Yeah, you're right. He's awesome.
That's a great feeling, too, when you can turn people on to certain guys.
Yeah, for sure.
I was that way with RVD and ECW. I couldn't wait to show my friends.
Same, yeah. Like RVD, I was stoked. Like, I think he was one of the bright spots of like the kind of dark period that a lot of wrestlers or a lot of fans don't want to talk about, the Invasion.
Yep.
But yeah, RVD was always like, when they brought him in, like every match he had, I'm like, oh, dude, this guy is awesome. Just wait, check this guy out. And then when my friend saw him, I'm like, oh yeah, shit, that guy's really cool.
Yeah, his Invasion angle with Jeff Hardy was really good. His match at Invasion pay-per-view.
Like, the ladder match was awesome. No, was it the rematch? I was trying to remember the rematch where they had like the really funny botch where like RVD I think tried to kick something in Jeff Hardy's face and it whiffed by a country mile. But other than that, it was like it was awesome. I love watching moments like that when they botch. I'm a horrible person, but I'm like I get a weird kick out of watching they whiffed a move where they're selling a super kick where you can see the wind behind the kick when they fall. I always think that stuff's hilarious.
So in the 2000s, what did you end up watching? Did you stick with WWE?
Yeah, for the most part, I think I stuck with WWE for a couple years. I kind of got out of wrestling for a couple years, like sometime after Eddie Guerrero passed away. That one really hit hard because he was like just an incredible performer. Like everything he did was gold, and it almost felt like kind of a void after that. So I stopped watching, I think, for like a couple more years, and then I think it was 2008 or 2009 when not long after my wife and I moved back in together, where it was just on TV one day, and I'm like, oh, hey. Yeah, this guy is cool. And then I kind of got back into it again, and then I've kind of, for better or for worse, I've been watching WWE on and off ever since. Not much. I'm on the off phase with them right now, but it's something where you'll all hear about a good match and be like, oh, okay, I'll check it out. So, yeah, it's one of those, I don't know if it's like one of the, like a Stockholm Syndrome type thing where it's like you can't escape your captor.
Guilty pleasure.
That too.
Well, that's awesome. So I believe you're also into Japanese wrestling. Is that right?
So I got into that a little bit before I kind of knew. I watched some Ring of Honor in its early days where they brought over guys like Kenta was probably the big one, Misawa, Kobashi for a few like big matches before I kind of really knew years later, like about All Japan, Pro Wrestling, New Japan, and kind of all those. I didn't get into those regularly until probably about 2013, 2014, I think.
Okay.
I watched.
And how did that happen?
A friend of mine had introduced me to like a New Japan pay-per-view, and then when I heard he was telling me about this wrestler Kazuchika Okada, who's like that's their main guy right now. And I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. And I'm like, oh, hey, this is really cool. And then eventually they started offering more. New Japan itself started off product like in English. Well, now it has like English commentary for a lot of their bigger shows and things like that. So eventually, like, I kind of got into Japanese wrestling, and now I'm watching like all kinds of things. It's been their style is so different, but a lot of like the best matches almost kind of transcend that language barrier. So a lot of that is really enjoyable.
Sure. So how did you find this wacky world of EFEDing then?
So that one was back in I want to say it was 99 or 2000. My stepdad, actually, of all people, he and a friend of his from work at the time had tried e-wrestling, and he told me about it, but then he kind of fell out of it pretty quickly. He's like, oh, this is boring. I don't want to just sit there and write about this all day. First Fed I was in was not an original EFED, but the one where you have to pick Stone Cold or The Rock, but by the time you get there, somebody's already picked Stone Cold or The Rock, so you're stuck with like Taka Michinoku, Val Venus, or whoever was at the bottom of the card. Well, you know what, damn it, I chose Val Venus, and I like to say it sucked.
And you were how old at this point?
I was about 14 or 15, I want to say, kind of right in there.
Yeah, I started about the same age, and it was also awful. So yeah, it's always interesting, and I'm sure you started every promo with "Hello, ladies."
Yeah, if you don't, then it's not Val Venus. I mean, when we met in person, I think we talked about Val. I'm like, okay, I'd say to this day, like, watching his work, he was kind of underrated, but he had the gimmick that was just held him back, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
Him down, and you couldn't get away from it. But I mean, dude, everybody marked it. Hello, ladies. That was the best. It was hilarious.
That was the shit.
His one-liners were so hilarious.
And they were so good, yeah. It's not the motion in the ocean. Or no, it's not the size of the boat. It's the motion in the ocean.
Yeah, and it's like, hello, ladies. My left leg is Christmas. My right leg is New Year's. Come visit me between the holidays. And like, he just had some killer lines. Like, it was hilarious.
Oh, that's great. Great impression. Oh, good deal. You were doing video feds. No, I'm kidding. So moving on from Val Venus, where did you go from there? Did you move up in that Fed, or did you find your niche with original characters?
Found original characters shortly thereafter. I found a Fed that fellow staff of Defiance, Tom Ford, was part of, and then I think he ran Internet Wrestling Organization, which was pretty big at its time. It was so big they had a lot of people applying at once. So when I applied, I got accepted with a really crappy El Generico knockoff before there was an El Generico. It was like El Bastardo Loco, the crazy bastard. And he didn't wrestle like a luchador. He was a big, tall, white dude in a luchador mask, if I remember right, that was trying to do spots badly. And but I had fun writing some of that stuff, even though I'm sure if I ever actually found any of that stuff to this day, it would be like god awful. Because I remember I would do these RPs where it would be him and like his drunk wrestling buddies in a bar, and they would just talk shit about. It was one of those like RP feds where you talk shit about your opponent, so it would just be him getting drunk and talking shit. And I won a title, I remember 2 or 3 matches in, so it couldn't have been all that bad, or they just felt sorry for me and gave me a belt. It's one of the two.
Was it a hardcore belt? Usually that's the one they always gave me.
It was a hardcore belt, yes. That was like the
there you go.
Extreme title or something like that, and I don't remember if it was Extreme with an X or Extreme with an E, which is considerably less extreme.
Yeah, that's great. And who was your first original character?
So I would say El Bastardo Loco was probably my first original one.
Okay.
And I remember for a time it was fun. I don't think I was in that bed very long. I think maybe less than 6 months or so. I remember it was fun for the time I was there. I wasn't there too long, but that's where kind of like, oh, hey, this is kind of fun. And then eventually, it's been so long, I'm trying to remember where I even went from there. I tried to get into Primetime Championship Wrestling, which was a big one in like the PTC community, but
okay,
that one was so big, I'm like, I wasn't even good enough to even get on the roster. I think they had like 4 different feeder feds, and I was in one of those. And that one had the worst initials. I'm trying to remember. It was like NTICW, and I don't even remember. I just remember it was like nobody seen would ever call the promotion that.
No one's going to remember
Yeah,
this.
exactly. It was like 5 or 6 initials long, and I'm like, it wasn't good, and I don't even remember what character I had then. So I pieced out of there pretty quick. Then eventually, PCW had another promotion, OSW, Old School Wrestling, not the role play one that's out there today, but it was a different one.
Yeah.
That had 2 different promotions. There was Old School Wrestling and then OSF, Old School Fighting, which was like almost a UFC type. It was basically wrestling, but instead of it being in a ring, it was in like an octagon type thing. But they were wrestling characters were in a weird fighting bed where it was angled. It would be like an angled promotion, but if the WWE guys were in a UFC octagon, pretty much.
Okay, I got you. Interesting.
Yeah.
So we kind of see that today in today's feds.
Yeah.
A lot of different MMA feds and underground fighting clubs and that kind of thing.
Yeah, some good, some.
So, and I'm sure it was the same then.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. OSF was fun because that's where I actually handled probably my most. You've heard Lynn's talk about Sonny Silver. That was probably my biggest character at the time. I handled him for quite a few years, and that's where I got him started. And his gimmick was like kind of the typical cheating heel. Really nothing remarkable about him at the time, but then I started writing things and I'm like, oh, and then kind of found a niche is like making him almost a comedy type character for a time where he would be like the comedic heel that would cheat badly.
We heard a lot about Sonny Silver on the Lindsay Troy episode.
Yeah. So Sonny, eventually he kind of fleshed out away from the comedic heel to become more, I think, a much more well-rounded character. After OSW, there was a promotion called the Squared Circle that he was a part of, and I credit that one to this day with being able to do like a lot of my match writing to this day. Like I learned about psychology and kind of what moves make sense in a match. Now at the time, everybody that joined that fed was stupid because they were all match writers that wrote like 23-page epics, which I don't have time for 23-page epics anymore. Like it was popular around the time that Ring of Honor became a thing. So that was their first couple of years getting off the ground.
Sure, everybody wanted to write Ring of Honor.
Exactly, yeah, and I think it even had the same rules as like the old Pure title, where it was like you had 3 rope breaks, 20 count on the outside. So it kind of challenged me. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I credit it to this day because I think it kind of helped shape how it kind of shaped what I do today for match writing and whatnot, like being able to kind of plan spots. Now it's easy for me where I've done so many at this point. Like I can imagine it all in my head and just type it and I can be done with like 3 or 4 pages in like less than an hour. So
yeah, your match writing ability is uncanny. And in my experience with you and Scott R., who is actually just on the podcast 2 weeks before this, are the biggest powerhouse writers I've ever met.
Yeah, he's even, when I feuded with him, he's even blown me away as far as like I remember when I was feuding with earlier on in Defiance with his Crimson Lord character. Yeah, he was just so good. He would have stuff done and be like, oh hey, I wrote this. Oh, holy shit, he wrote this. Wait, I don't have to do this for somebody else? What it's like being me. I gotta find another me to hang out with. I gotta write less of this shit.
And you found one in Scott, and that's awesome. Yeah, Scott's a great writer, and both of you guys, whether it comes to matches, writing, role plays, or I don't know about your role play ability, but I mean, segments and angle stuff. It's great. I've sat down and say, okay, let's write this, and then 15 minutes later, you're already done.
Yeah, and I think it's just I'm weird because I'm one of those people that I haven't met many in the hobby that have fun with the match writing aspect the most because ultimately that's where the story lead up to. So I think that's where, to me, I know it's weird, but in my mind, that's where it's most important because that's where all roads will lead to. Your role play, your segment, wherever. That's where it all leads.
Yep. Everything ends in a match.
Exactly, yes. And then that's where I think the story matters the most.
That's great. And there's not many like you, so that's a great attribute to have.
I try.
So Sonny Silver took the EFED world by storm, and you formed many friendships under that banner. Mm-hmm. Guys like Tom Ford, Lindsay Troy, and other people back then, Dan Ryan. What did Sonny Silver end up doing? What was his biggest accomplishments, biggest feuds, etc.?
So after the Squared Circle, the Squared Circle, he won his first major championship. He became their top champion. Feuded with a character named Alias, handled by a guy named Russell. I don't believe he's in the hobby anymore, but he was a really good writer as well. Sonny kind of became the top heel of the promotion, and then he just kind of became a cocky dickbag. I know I know it sounds unoriginal, but just I don't know, for some reason I wrote him in a way that people enjoyed, so I'm like, okay, cool, I'll take it. I'm not sure.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure what it is that I did, or I don't feel like it was anything special, but I'm like, you know what, it happened, and yeah.
Other people enjoyed it, apparently.
Yeah, for sure.
So
that's where he got his start. Then after TSC, he joined the FWO, and if I don't talk about the FWO and Silver and Gold, Lindsay,
Pete will kill you.
Pete will kill me. Lindsay will kill me. I haven't known Warren Deacon's handler long enough to know, but at the very least, Peter Linz will. So I should probably talk about that. I was in there for, I think, pretty much 2005. I think the year 2005, after Squared Circle folded. Then Sonny was kind of the cocky dickbag, but if I remember, I think I had him on like a losing streak to kind of eventually build him up some. But then Lynn, I don't remember who approached. I think Lynn's came to me with the idea where she wanted to do like a tag, and she liked the character, if I remember correctly. And she can correct me on this. She probably will correct me on this if I'm wrong.
She will. Yeah, she absolutely will.
I'm probably wrong.
So,
but
she actually probably already told the story on episode 14, I believe.
Probably, yeah. So they were a tag team, Silver and Gold, and it was like I kind of look at it like the wacky partners thing, because Sonny was a heel, Lindsay Troy was the face, but just defying all logic and reason. The story not only worked, but we did a lot of stuff that I remember just had us laughing our asses off, and like creating these plans where I think the company they believe that the company was against their character, the FW's management was against them at the time, so they formed this team to be like, stick it to the company. So they won their tag titles, but then they kind of became a hit overnight. And yeah, I had so much fun working with worked with a few good handlers. There's I'd be remiss to probably one of my best friends in the hobby, Sean. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple years ago. But he handled a character named Logic that was he was like the straight man for everybody else's humor. He was teamed with a character, Dr. Curiosity. They were a curious Logic, and just by all reasons, like, it sounds like goofy characters, but they were so awesome together. It was our wacky mismatch tag team against their wacky mismatch tag team, and it created a fun wacky mismatch tag team match, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's awesome. I'm sorry to hear about your friend. It's nice that people can be in this hobby, and that even when we leave, oftentimes our legacy is saved by what we've written.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's probably one of my best friends in the hobby to this day. He was a really good writer. He was a really good friend. Eventually there'd be times where it's like, we weren't in the same fed, and we kind of fall out of contact, and then we joined this fed together again. Hey, let's do some more stuff. Okay, great. And then it was like, we just picked up where we left off. Like, the chemistry was just that awesome.
That's great. And so where did Sonny Silver go from there?
So after that, he went to, I think probably where he got his biggest was Prime Wrestling. I think Lindsay, if I remember correctly, was already there with Lindsay Troy. I had actually joined with Sean and created what I think is literally the stupidest gimmick I think I've ever done, but arguably the most successful. Sonny Silver literally came in as a Vince McMahon ripoff called Sonny Silver, or Mr. Silver, Chairman of Prime. And he had to be addressed as Mr. Silver, Chairman of Prime, or he wouldn't answer you. And
he went by the full title.
Yes, exactly. And if the ring announcer didn't say Mr. Silver, Chairman of Prime, he wouldn't acknowledge it, and made everybody do it. And it's every bit as stupid as it sounds, but it was so much fun. I think I even literally had his theme music be I forgot what band. It was one of those rock or rap albums that WWE came with, where like somebody got paid money to cover a version of No Chance in Hell. That was his theme for the first year that it was there. And I know a lot of promotions these days, it's kind of taboo to like talk about or joke about real life wrestling. You know, it doesn't exist in the e-world, that sort of thing. But for reasons unknown to me, maybe because it made the Fed head at the time laugh, they let me do it. They didn't really say, hey, you can't reference real wrestling. So I had a blast with it so much that kind of the popularity of that made Sonny's popularity skyrocket. He won another Extreme title. Wrestling is a Hulk Hogan knockoff, if I remember correctly. The opponent was really another awesome handler. I think his name was Tommy. He handled a character named Sun Tzu, who is like this evil little Chinese girl, but like it was so well written. The character was great. So Sonny was like the real American, you know, fighting the evil Chinese communist to win the championship. Sonny was a full blown heel, but that match, I think I even had him as a face. So it was just every bit as fucking ridiculous as it sounds, but it was so much fun.
That's great. Yeah, playing a Hulk Hogan ripoff.
Yeah.
You were the original, who was it? Was it Sandow or was it, no, Sandow was Macho Man. You were the original Curtis Axel.
Yeah, yes. Axel Mania, brother.
Silvermania.
Yeah, Silvermania.
So where did Sonny Silver go from after Prime? Or did he?
So Prime was probably his last full-handled tenure anywhere. He actually, later on, Sonny dropped the character. He got more serious. He got into the Universal Championship was the top title feud with Lindsay Troy of like ex-partners. So that was a lot of fun. Eventually, and Linz beat my ass probably 3 or 4 times, and it was a role-play fed too. So Linz whipped my ass probably 3 or 4 times before I finally got one on her, and eventually won the championship. So I kind of hold that in high regard because she's such an amazing writer. So to be able to like beat her one time, it was like, all right, cool. Now I can retire. And then eventually,
now I can retire.
Yeah, now I can retire. And then eventually, not long after that, just for different reasons, the character ended up I more or less retired him. Just at the point, the writing with him was good, but it just I kind of felt like at the time I'd handled him a few years, the character had kind of run its course. So I think I managed another character for a time with Sonny, but then I think if I remember right, I had to leave the hobby for a little bit. I don't remember why, but I took a break around that time. I think I might have just been burnout at the time. But Sonny got a Hall of Fame nomination for Prime that, you know, it was still, I look at it like a big achievement to this day. So that's kind of cool to have like a Hall of Fame level character.
Absolutely. In one Fed. That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. You know, to this day, yeah, it's still something like, oh wow, that really happened. Cool. There's been a couple times where like I've tried to bring back Sonny, but it just like one FWO had come back in like 2009, and I tried, but it just I felt like still the character had kind of run its course. It was this natural conclusion. He got a Hall of Fame spot. Cool. And then it was like Ric Flair going to TNA after he got the Hall of Fame. The cool send off was just like, why?
Why am I doing this? Yeah.
And then just kind of retired him. And then, yeah, like I think around that time I'd kind of been out of the hobby for a little bit. So, hadn't really done much of anything. And then he kind of retired quietly again, and then I kind of swept that story under the rug. So yeah, as far as anybody else is concerned, that last 5 minutes I never talked about, he ended in Prime, Hall of Fame, good job, never came back, tarnished.
Nothing, it never happened, guys. Come on.
Yes, never happened.
Get with the program.
Yeah, for real.
That's awesome. So after Sonny Silver, who's our next original character? One of your billion.
One of my billion. Probably my next biggest character. I had a character named Andy Sharp.
Yes.
So Andy, I handled a little bit in 2006 on the side in a small role play promotion like Toronto Wrestling, and which is actually, it was a promotion that Marcus, who's in Defiance now, he handles the Biggest Boy Dex Joy. That was his baby for years. It was a board fed, but that's where I actually met him around that time. I had a lot of fun with him, and then eventually we weren't there too long, but then eventually Andy made his way to All-Star Championship Wrestling, or ACW, and a lot of big characters have handled there. I believe Lindsay might have been there for a little bit. Spike Saunders, who, if anybody knows NBW, kind of NBW fame. Alias, who I mentioned earlier, that feuded with Sonny in the Squared Circle. That was kind of his home base promotion. Andy Sharp kind of was really fun for me because he was kind of the first take I've ever done of like a homegrown babyface character, which Sonny was predominantly a heel, other than like the little bits of time where maybe the odd match here and there where he was a face. Sonny was predominantly a heel. So Andy was kind of a challenge for me because at the time, like, I don't feel like I knew what the fuck I was doing with a babyface character. He was a tall, good looking rookie, but I wanted to try the homegrown route and just try to challenge myself doing something new. And
sure,
I think the first few months it was okay, but then I worked with another handler, Sean, the handler I mentioned earlier, Sean. Probably his most well-known character, the Final Fantasy Seymour Almacy, who was like a video game obsessed character at the time, like obsessed with all things Final Fantasy, but it is a much better character than maybe I make it sound. Seymour was like his best friend. And the characters both kind of rose up the ranks in ECW together, like they feuded over the television title, which was like the third tier belt. Then eventually Andy rose on to become the Spirit of ACW, which was like the Intercontinental title level, but it had an interesting gimmick where the champion could choose each match stipulation as each defense allows. So that was pretty interesting. I had that with him as a face, and then his first attempt as a heel, which ended up being a lot of fun because he was such a dick.
I don't know many dicks in this game. That's awesome, man. That was the start of Andy Sharp. That's something I did not know.
Yeah. Eventually, he won the main championship. ACW kind of folded back in, I think, like 2009. Came back in 2010, 2011, I think, and then Andy won the world title 2 more times there, if I remember correctly, tag belt. So he kind of won. I think he eventually became a Grand Slam champion, if I'm not mistaken. I think he had every belt there was to hold. And he'd kind of, during those 2 years, Andy kind of flip-flopped face heel, not quite Big Show levels, but I remember I tried to handle the heel, but I think the character was just, he was naturally meant to be a face character, because anytime, like, I think other than when he first turned, other than his first heel turn, I think any other time I tried, it felt forced. And then with the character, I think because he was such a naturally good-hearted, like, honor-bound person, I think that's kind of why it was so hard to imagine him as anything but he was most successful being like kind of the good guy character,
a baby face, yeah.
And then eventually kind of becoming like arguably like if ACW was TNA, he'd be it's AJ Styles. Like that's the first guy you think of when you think of that promotion type deal.
Wow. Yeah, that's high praise to be the franchise player.
Yeah, like that was, and that's hasn't happened too many times in the hobby, but it's with him, so I enjoyed it.
That's awesome. So Andy Sharp would go on to do much, much more in the hobby.
Yeah, and
do you want to continue with Andy Sharp before we go to or do you want to hit the same Fed over and over?
No, that was pretty much it. I had Andy Sharp there, and then when one of my go round, I think probably my first go round in Defiance, I actually brought Andy Sharp there.
How did you get to Defiance?
So after Prime, I decided I didn't want to try to do many more RP feds because it was a really good storytelling RP fed, but I felt like I'd kind of any creative juices I had with that sort of thing, I used them all up in that way. Defiance had been RP, but then I'd known Justin. I think Justin was in ECW for a cup of coffee, like with Frank Dillon James, if I remember right, and he had told me, "Oh, hey, Defiance is going Angle," which I know he's gone on record and saying that was the decision he regretted. But I'm like, hey, that made me sign up, and I've been here to this day. So
Yep.
So he had told me, oh, hey, if you want, we're looking for some characters. So I came in with, before I brought Andy Sharp over, I handled, they had a trios division, and I had never really seen that in EFED before. And I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. So I had a group called Team Haas, which was Angel Trinidad, who is like a tall, like 6'10" New Yorker, like blue chipper type that WWE would be, and Vince would be like jerking off over, but he was green as shit. And he was kind of goofy at the time. Alexander the Great, who was like a Rob Terry from Impact, like just a big jacked up Brit. He had more charisma than Rob Terry, probably not much more wrestling ability than Rob Terry, but in a tag team, perfect. And then my buddy Sean had one of his first characters from the old IWO, Capital Punishment, who is like a prison guard type character. For the purposes of the group, he was like the veteran, the grizzled vet who could work, even though he was kind of like arguably past his prime, so to speak. And so he was kind of the glue that held the group together. And it was, at first, I kind of came in as like a wacky mismatch team, but then I think Justin at the time's like, well, can these guys be heels instead? I think they'd be much better. And I'm like, yeah, I agree, because I tried writing them face, and the whole combination sucked. So I handled them for a time. I won the Trios Championships and had like a really fun run. And again, I got to work with Lynn's yet again and do some really fun stuff with them. And they worked as like kind of monster heels. They kind of feuded with I think just about everybody at the top, like Dusty Griffith, who was like a main event guy. Eric, I think they had a match with Eric Dane, who was like, the brainchild of Defiance, I think, in the Fed's history.
Absolutely.
So I mean, they kind of got to rub elbows with a lot of people at the top, which I thought was a really nice kind of compliment for the characters. Then eventually I brought in Andy Sharp, and then I met this guy who hadn't, I think if I remember correctly, he hadn't been in many angles. You might know him. I think his name was Michael Unlikable, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. This was my first angle Fed.
Yeah, that's right.
Defiance was. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
You picked it up really quick. So, I mean, I'll say that. You had that going for you. You picked up really fast. Mikey Unlikely was a great character, like, just right off the bat. And if I remember correctly, I remember a lot of people were like shitting on the character when
yeah.
like, you understand, like, this is part of the character, is that I don't remember who said it, but I remember it's like, this sounds corny as shit. I'm like, I think that's the point, bro. And
that's what I'm going for. Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm like, I'm glad you got in. And yeah, so like, we had that feud, I think, over the Southern Heritage title, if I remember correctly, but I had to deuce out of the hobby. Yep. Unfortunately, my son, I had my first kid shortly thereafter, so I kind of had to, obviously take some time off for that. But I remember in the time that you and I worked together, like, I had a blast with you. SEG, like the Sports Entertainment Guild was just fucking amazing. I went back and read some of that stuff, like, after I come back. And, like, you, Kendricks, the PCPs, they were
Tom and Billy,
fucking gold. Amazing. Like, everything you guys touched, just gold, Jerry, gold.
And you can get that 24K gold shirt over at efedtees.com.
Yeah.
How about that?
Also, what's the atomic shit? No, you do the plug. Sorry.
Yeah. We gotta get your Defiance
I'm
plug
stealing
in.
my gimmick. Oh, I'll be ready for that when the time comes. Trust me.
Very good. Okay, so Andy Sharp versus Mikey Unlikely happened when I was early into my EFED career, and actually that was the last time Andy Sharp was seen for quite some time.
Yes. Then I brought him back a couple I think I brought him back last year, and I was shooting with Billy for the 2 arcs. But as many people know me, I'm the man of a million characters. There's not a character idea that I don't think I've had or have at least thought at some point. Eventually, yes, even the man of a million characters had a wall that he hits with too many characters. So, and it wasn't around long. And again, it was one of those things we talked about where I think the character is just so naturally, like for me anyway, I had made him so naturally likable at one point. I had him as a heel, and just I think after a couple arcs, I just wasn't feeling it. So he was kind of the guy that had to go.
And you were kind of handling, so many characters at the same time at that point.
And it was just, I did have fun with Billy. Like, it was a great angle for a couple arcs with him and Elise Aries over the Southern Heritage Championship. But yeah, just after a while, it was just like, all right. And I think it was a case of literally eeny, meeny, miny, Andy. Okay, you're out. Get out.
Just too much. Yeah, I get it. I think we've all been in that burnout stage. We've all had make the decision, okay, I need a break, or I'm overwhelmed. Can I at least ease back?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did for, I think maybe 2 months, and then I probably took on another character. Yeah.
So, yeah, let's talk about Oscar Burns.
All right. So I think when I came back after about 6 months or a year or so after my son was born, I came back to Defiance. And so I had brainstormed a character where I just wanted to give. I don't even remember where the Oscar Burns name came from, but I remember I wanted a character who had like a rhyming scheme for a name. I don't know why. For reasons unknown to me, it was just something.
I know why. You were inspired by a man on the other end of the microphone.
I was. That's true. And then I had the idea for this character. I'm like, okay, twists and turns, and then I'm like, I didn't want to handle I at first when I thought of the name, I thought it would lend itself to like a flip floppy like a flippy doo type character, but I'm like, you know what, this is one of those times where I'm gonna try and challenge myself again. So I'll try a face character because at the time Defiance needed faces. What kind of character haven't I done before? And then so I hadn't really done many characters over the years in like the technical realm type stuff, at least since Squared Circle, and that was back in like 2004, so a long time since you
were writing powerhouses.
Yeah. So that was like technical, like, oh God, I would probably look back on that stuff and it was such shit where it'd be like, right, for 5 pages, the first few pages were the entrance and the next few pages were, okay, he grabs this arm, then goes to this arm, then this arm, then that arm, and I'm like, okay, so yeah, I stopped doing that for a long time, and then I'm like, okay, I'll challenge myself, so I'll make this face character, and so the name Oscar Burns came to be. So twists and turns, Oscar Burns. Perfect. Like the name rolls off the tongue. One of the best compliments I think I ever got was Murr, friend of the show, a friend of mine as well. Worked with in the hobby, good guy. What did he call it? A goat level nickname. I'm like, oh, that's a fantastic compliment right off the bat. The name's gonna get stuck in your head. So I'm like, perfect.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you're not gonna forget twists and turns, Oscar Burns.
Yeah.
Even when you refer to him in promos, you're gonna call him by his full nickname.
Oh yeah, I try to work that in as many times as possible on purpose because I enjoy writing it out so much. I shit you not. It's just it makes me crack up to this day because I'm an asshole who laughs at his own things, and I swear, like, the only comedy I do these days is just to make myself laugh. If other people laugh, great. If not, I'm still entertained at least. So,
are you not entertained? Yeah, no.
At least I am.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I came in with him. And as I brainstorm the character, I'm like, okay, I'll make it from another country. So I think New Japan has a couple wrestlers from like New Zealand, but they speak English and stuff. I'm like, okay, I'll have them come for some more quirky like New Zealand. And then coincidentally, like one of my favorite comedians and actors, Rise Darby, he really funny stand-up comic. He's a really bubbly, kind of not really out there, sometimes out there personality. Really bubbly. I'm like, oh, that would be fun in a face character. And he was just a blast writing. I try to, I think we talked about this before when we met in real life. Like when I come up with characters, I try to give them some level of authenticity. So it's like if they talk a certain way, I'll go online and actually do the research to like look up jargon native to like where they come from. Be like, okay, so I want to make sure I get it right. Sidebar on that one of it does pay off because one of the times when I handled Team Haas, the character Alexander the Great is British. One of the biggest compliments I got for that character was a handler here, Damien. He handled Eugene Dewey, who's probably one of Defiance's biggest.
Yes, love Eugene Dewey.
He was such a fun character. But yeah, Damien had said, like, dude, like your British accent writing this character spot on. And I think all I remember doing with the character was like just hearing Nigel McGuinness talk. I'm like, okay, how would he talk? And then, okay, I'll write that down. And it passed off as British enough that an actual British person enjoyed it. So that was a good compliment. So
yeah, there you go.
Work pays off.
Absolutely.
I haven't met a New Zealander and like, hey, stop, your Oscar Burns is shit. Stop handling this character right now.
Have you met any New Zealanders?
I have not. No, not in this hobby. So yeah. So until that day comes, I'll probably keep handling Burns. And then when they come along and be like, dude, this is shit. Why are you writing us this way? I'll be like, okay, sorry.
All right. My bad. All I know is the Bushwhackers. Come on.
Yeah. He was American all along.
There's a good spin. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the character, he kind of took off pretty quickly because I think maybe an arc or so in the UTA invasion got really underway where they were invading Defiance, and that was a lot of fun because that's where I met Justin, handler of Scott Stevens. Hi, Stevens, if you're listening.
Stevens. I love that. So glad you called him that.
Yeah. That's where I first met him. He was awesome to work with right off the bat. He was really open to just about any idea I had. I don't think we did anything like we didn't necessarily reinvent the wheel with our feud, but the feud between the two became so much fun between them that they've actually both advanced up the card. Kind of like Triple H and The Rock back in the day, where it's like they
from the same feud. Yeah, they both won.
Yeah, they both elevated themselves because Oscar went on to win. During the invasion, I got to work with Scott, handler of Crimson Lord, and that was a blast too. And I had never met him, but he put me over in like a big way right off the bat because I think he came in as the UTA World Champion, and Oscar Burns got to win that off him. So that was a really nice. A really nice story. He put me over, he hadn't met me before, but we clicked almost instantly. Like he was so much fun to work with, continues to be to this day. And hopefully soon I'll get to work with him again at some point. His new character Scro is awesome, and I think he'll be a breakout star to watch eventually.
He put you over on his interview too.
Yeah, like he was just a blast to work with. Like both him and Scott, like going up the card, they were great. Then eventually, because I had apparently so much fun having one child, I had a second one shortly after winning. So
you practice way too often, is all.
Apparently, yeah. I left when we had our second kid. So then I put over Scott, and then Scott Stevens won the championship on the way out. Then I think I want to say a few months later, it wasn't too long. I will say this for people with kids that might be listening. I swear to God, taking care of the second one was way easier than taking care of the first one. First one, you have no idea what the hell you're doing. Second, we at least had a nominal idea of how to take care of her, so our sleep schedule was much better. I think with my son, nobody slept at all because we were too guilty to let the other one sleep. So I feel like we all kind of suffered.
You learned your lesson because now it's shifts.
Yeah, exactly.
Then now you work better alert.
Exactly, yeah. And then I think we did like 5 or 6 hour shifts where, like my son would go to sleep and then one of us would take care of our daughter and then rotate, and that worked out so much better. So I think I was able to kind of recover. I recovered any little bit of sleep that we didn't get from our son at the time.
Good. Well, let me shout out to you and all of the others out there. Happy Father's Day to all the EFED dads.
Yes, for sure. Yes, happy Father's Day to everybody. Yeah, and hopefully your kids don't drive you batshit insane for too long during that day. And hopefully y'all are lucky. I'm sharing Father's Day this year with my daughter, who'll be turning 2. She'll be 2 before this airs. But no, it's fine. Like, she's adorable. Like, she's a sweet little girl. But yeah, so to Defiance, I came back with Oscar and kind of got right back in the mix with Scott Stevens, and then Kendricks had come back. So that was a blast getting to work with Kendricks on and off for feuding with the Fist of Defiance Championship, our top title.
Yep.
Shit, yeah, he was, yeah.
Was Oscar Burns your first Fist?
Yes, yeah, I think he's my first and only, so...
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, so Oscar Burns is my first and only.
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead. No, so you were battling Kendricks.
It's okay, yeah. So it was battling like Scott Stevens. It was a kind of an interesting, really fun like few arcs where it was like Oscar Burns' quest to get back to the top, which was a really fun story. It started with like a triple threat feud for DEF CON, which was like our WrestleMania level, of course, pay-per-view going that year. Feuding with Kendricks and Scott Stevens. Then Kendricks kind of stole the belt. Then Oscar Burns kind of had to put the issue with Scott Stevens to bed before he could then go on to fight Kendricks. So like that whole 9 months was a really fun like story arc for Burns, I think, that kind of really helped, even more so than his first title run, which admittedly wasn't very long. It helped him cement his place as like kind of arguably the top baby face of Defiance, I think. And I had such a blast between those 9 months working with those guys.
And definitely one of the best baby faces. I mean, I think that's your strength, and that's what obviously I like the family Keeling, and I like the heels, and I like some of the other fun stuff you write, but I gotta say, I think you're a natural babyface writer, because the stuff you write as a babyface, it's so easy as a heel to just work with it, to foil it, to, every time I was like, hey, let's do this, you're like, yeah, but here's how we can make it better. It's very easy when you're a natural face.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, I feel like, when I was handling Sonny for years, before being, I don't know. I don't know what this says about me, but being a natural asshole was just so much. Couldn't do it for a while. It just, it was hard to do, and then eventually it was something I kind of learned, like observing other baby faces like that have been handled through like trial and error. And I think the biggest thing that I learned was like, hey, your baby face should be good, but they should be flawed in some way, because that's what draws attention to them. And I think kind of taking that lesson to heart kind of helped shape characters like Andy Sharp and of course Oscar Burns, I think.
And they are great characters, and you've had a great run in Defiance with not only them, but obviously Oscar Burns, Andy Sharp, Team Haas, the family Keeling. Do you want to touch on the family Keelings?
So the family Keeling have been due to their. I haven't seen
a lot of iterations.
Yeah, I handled them in another promotion, NBW View at first, and then kind of taken their gimmick to other places like ACW, but probably Defiance is where they've been used the most. And so it was kind of a unique tandem where they were father-son managing team. So the father, Thomas Keeling Sr., is the kind of the coach, or like the brains of the team. He's like the mastermind that, he's
the patriarch.
Yeah, pretty much. He's like the guy that this is his brainchild. He's the guy that comes up with the strategies and all that. And then his son, Junior Keeling. So if Thomas is more like a Paul Heyman type guy, like, very like strict business. He's the one that kind of manages, makes the strategies. Junior Keeling's the mouthy little promoter, shitbird, like a young, thin,
gets ahead of himself every time.
I had 2 versions of Team Haas during Defiance, where like one was managed by Junior, where he was the mouthy little guy hiding behind the 3 big guys. He got fired, so Thomas Keeling came in, and he kind of ran him in a more like militant, you better shape up or ship the fuck out type of attitude, and managed Angel by himself for a while. Then eventually with one of the characters I handle now, the Titan of Industry, Uriel Cortez, I thought, I'm like, okay, I'll have him come back. Both guys manage the same dude. which might be a fun, kind of a fun way to manage. I don't think I've rarely seen two managers manage the same person before. And then he was fun for a while. Like Guriel was kind of like the silent. I thought of a funny gimmick where he was a silent, well-dressed monster, but he was well-dressed even in his matches, where like he could beat the shit out of the other guy so fast without even taking off his suit for a while. And I had fun writing that. Then had him for about a year, and it kind of bounced between a couple feuds. When Burns started out his second reign as the Fist, we didn't have a lot of handlers that were available for that arc to do like a world title feud. So for reasons unknown to me, Brian let me handle basically my own world title feud. But I actually had fun doing it because it was like Burns fighting the biggest guy he'd ever fought. And you know, he wasn't like any other opponent where Burns couldn't just lock in a submission. Like, he had to beat the shit out of this big dude before he could do anything. And I actually had fun doing that. I can feud with myself because I know I'm not going to flake on myself.
You can count on you.
If anybody can say anything about my tenure in wrestling, it's that. You can count on me eventually.
Oh, that's for sure. So that's awesome. So, I mean, Defiance has been great to you. You've had a hell of a run there with a lot of characters, and that's why we call you the man of 1,000 characters. Is there anything else before we move on to questions from the crowd that you want to cover?
No, just, you know, I'm having a blast. I think it's just awesome to see current day Defiance just kind of really, I feel like it's really firing on all cylinders with a lot of great handlers. I think it's probably among the busiest that I think I've seen it in a while, and it's awesome. And I hope everybody keeps it up. And for those keeping score, at this time, I'm only handling 3 characters, 5 characters, sort of. So I've got Oscar.
Somewhere between 3 to 5.
That's a good number, which I think, no, I was going to say it's more or less than Roland, but I think it's probably, it equates to about the same. So,
you are basically Roland. No.
Sorry.
Roland, he's also a man with many characters and a Canadian man. Sorry. Good, good shout there. Yeah. Shout out to our Canadian listeners, Rick, Mac, and the rest of the gang up there. We've had a lot of interviews who've been Canadian. I know you're right there on the border.
Yeah, so I'm in just a few hours south. So, and you know what's funny? I've only been there once, which is kind of interesting the whole time I've been in here, but not important, probably not important.
I've only been there twice, so I'm with you. All right. Over on the Twitter machine, we got a question from Rick. Rick wants to know if your mom's hot.
All right.
Did you prepare yourself for this one as a listener?
I kind of did. Yeah, as a listener, yes, I have. So I'll say objectively, sure. Why not?
Oh, there you go. Changing it up. I like that. Is she single?
No, she's been happily married 20 years now.
See, buddy, all these moms, the hot ones they're taken. Question 3. Any 2 wrestlers from any promotions, regardless of era, at the height of their ability, who's headlining your pay-per-view?
Is this real wrestler or EFED character?
Yes, this is real wrestler. Okay. Let's do both. Okay. Let's do both.
The one that they just kind of crossed paths but never really happened. I would say either, if I'm wanting to make the most money, Stone Cold and Hulk Hogan, or Stone Cold and Goldberg, because those were probably 2 of the biggest what if matches that never got to happen.
So you're a name guy. You're all about the name, the recognition, the box office.
I would say if I'm wanting to, if biggest match I can think of with the biggest stars, I need the hook to bring everybody else in for the rest of the card. Those are the guys I'm going with.
It's hard to argue. What do you got for e-wrestlers?
There have been so many good ones.
Or e-characters, I guess, not a wrestler or not a handler specific.
Probably one of my favorite face characters, a buddy of mine, Russell, who I handled with an ECW. He had a character name, and TSC had a character named Alias, who was such a well-written, gruff baby face, I think he would be a natural fit for actually somebody like a Mikey Unlikely, where it would. I think the stories between the two would be a lot of fun. Like the gruff takes no shit, baby face against the chicken shit heel who's willing to do anything to win. I think that would be a great money story right there. So,
well, thanks, buddy. I appreciate you including
me.
Good deal. So. Question 4 from Rick. What's your favorite gimmick match to watch or to see in an EFED?
There have been a lot of good ones.
I'll let you think. I really want to answer this question. My favorite's the Royal Rumble.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, shit. That's a really good one. So, yeah. I'm not just gonna...
I don't mean to feed you an answer.
No, it's okay. No, that is a good one. Like, that's one I think, no matter what, it has like that certain level of excitement that, just not a lot of other matches can replicate these days. I will say, yeah, probably like a Royal Rumble style match. They've been, not so much in recent years, but I would say like when ladder matches like a few years ago, when they weren't as in abundance, like some of those were some of the best I've ever seen. I've seen so many like really good ones, like just any of the TLC matches, I think, were just fucking amazing. Like the shit that those guys could come up with. Like, oh, I never would have thought of that. Like, just the spectacle, like the car crash type style, like was just amazing. So I think kind of when those were in the heyday, I would say probably those in real wrestling.
What about e-wrestling?
E-wrestling, I've seen some really good, like, I think probably like grudge match style thing. So I'm talking like no disqualification, like just where you can write two characters, just like, oh, these guys have just been wanting to beat the piss.
It's a fight.
It's a fucking fight. Like, I think it's the same reason I kind of like some of the bigger matches that have taken place in like Japanese wrestling. There's like a big fight feel to a lot of like those style matches where it's two guys just beating the unholy shit out of each other to see which one's the better one. And then when you're adding like a no disqualification, like settle a grudge, like that sort of thing, I think if done right can be really awesome. So.
That's a good answer because it's not the most over-the-top gimmick. It's simple. It's effective. If you have the right story, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Yep, good stuff. Over on the Discord, we got a ton of questions for you. Let's see.
I can't wait to see how many versions of how many millions of characters do you have. I've been prepared.
That's going to be 90.
I've been mostly prepared. So.
All right. The EFED podcast. Sorry, I had to close it because of notifications. Oh, no. All right. From Warren, favorite memory from the FWO.
I got to touch on it a little bit, but pretty much I think anything with Lynn's and silver and gold was literally gold. Like I had such a fucking blast doing that angle. They had a fun run with the tag titles. I got to work with a lot of great handlers. I think even a couple of main event guys, if I remember correctly at the time. So like it was everything about that time period working with Linz was a blast.
Easy answer for you. What would be Burns' retirement match if it worked out perfectly?
So I had to think about this because Burns is kind of a newer character. I'd say probably within the last maybe 4 years, 3-4 years, I think I've had him. If I'm going off just his recent history, I would have to guess it would have to involve something with either Scott Stevens or Crimson Lord. And I think
yes.
And I touched on this with Justin when you interviewed him. If that's a retirement match, Burns is going over. I've put his ass over enough, so you owe me a couple. For being technical, but yeah, that's the one I'm taking. So
awesome. Yeah, no, I think Scott Stevens is an excellent choice for that. You guys have had a great couple of feuds, and I think it's not over yet. You could still go back to the well one or two more times and it not be stale. Which is a compliment for an angle fed. Sure. So absolutely good answer. Up next is OG Megan, high rank. Favorite character out of all of the many you've played?
I would have to say it's probably going to be a tie at this point between Sonny Silver, because I had such fun with him in his heyday, and then Oscar Burns, because Burns, I think he's probably become my key character in the last few years. Like, I feel like I've done a lot with him, but I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of what he can do, and I think that's kind of the most intriguing thing for me.
Very well-rounded character. All right. Up next is Landell, another member of the Defiance roster. What psychological trauma in your past led you to burying your tortured psyche in 1 million characters online?
Well, my uncle had a barn. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I felt like I've always been a very creative person, and I have one of those brains where it's like I think of this idea, and sometimes I just can't shut that shit off. So I think because I have an outlet like e-wrestling to kind of pour that type of energy into, I think that's why I get so creative with like however many characters I've been able to think up. I've had so many ideas that I've written down and have been forgotten by time. I don't even know how many I've come up with at this point.
Well, we're glad they have been, because you wouldn't have any time for your real life.
True. Yeah, that's real true.
What are your current thoughts on fedding today? From Fuzz. Hold it down in the Discord.
So I like this question actually because, and I will say actually because of the EFED podcast, I think it's actually really awesome kind of seeing how many different types of feds are available now, because when I was coming up, it was typically RP or Angle or those shitty feds where, we're hybrid. No, you're not. Pick a side. I hated those. Or role play, that basically just translates to we'll come up with a story, but we're going to push the characters we want to push no matter what. Deal with it.
We want to. Yeah.
But how many different types of fedding? Because somebody a few weeks ago had mentioned like a simulated fed where the results are all simulated and you work around those, which I think was a really intriguing concept.
Between Angle, roleplay, sim feds, AI feds, the 2K feds, the Fire Pro feds, the Dice feds, it's crazy what's out there that I didn't even know.
I know, and I'm like, wait, like a D&D wrestling federation or something. But no, I'm like, okay, well that's cool. Like, so I think like innovation has been really amazing in the last few years, just based off like, since kind of the EFED podcast kind of opened me up to all these other communities that have kind of banded together. Like, I think it's really awesome to see the variety that's out there now. It's not just RP and Angle. Like, there's a lot of different ways to do it, and you can do. It's been really awesome to see. So.
Absolutely. I think it's healthier than anybody thought it was.
Yeah, for sure.
From Pete, he doesn't just, first of all, just so you know, he doesn't need a Stevenspedia shirt. How much did you enjoy my book, and why is it your favorite story of all time?
The book was excellent because it holds up my coffee table really well. I'm kidding. I will buy it someday so as not to incur your wrath. Probably sooner than later. So I'll just say in advance, that book changed my life. It made me want to be a better person. I don't know if I can suck that book's dick any harder.
What a review.
Yeah, what a great book. I couldn't put it down when I buy it. It was awesome when I buy it.
Amazing. At Marcus G, what's it been like to carry me through so many feds in the last 10 or so years I've known you? I'll ask the next question when you answer that one.
Well, sir, I need fucking Advil for my back. No, I'm kidding. No, Marcus, you know me. You've been a blast the last, 10 plus years. I think we've been fedding on and off together. So, my back hurts. I need Advil now, so.
Awesome. Marcus is a good one. I'm excited to see what he's going to do in Defiance. I think he's got so much potential. Dex Joy is, not only is he the biggest boy, but he is the best character. He's like Oscar Burns. He's got the rhyme gimmick down now. Yeah. So now all he needs is just that one good feud, that one good run. I low key, he's my favorite character in Defiance right now. Yeah,
he's been the shit. I have loved. He kind of told me about the idea because he almost wanted to bring in another like a tenured character. He had Tyson XL, and then he had this idea, and then I jokingly told him you should come up with a rhyming name, and then like the next day he puts up the biggest boy Dex Joy. I'm like, oh god. That's awesome. No, I love that character. Like he's so much fun. He's almost kind of reminds me of like Dusty Rhodes-ish. like kind of the big charismatic, like
he's 100% AC Romero.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Just like a big ass ball of energy. Yeah, just a great character, and I think you're right. Yeah, he's staff are definitely looking at him. I think he'll be getting a push, hopefully sooner than later. I think so. Yeah, he's.
I hope so. I'm advocating for him as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. Up next is also from Marcus. Of your million characters, which is your least favorite?
Oh, shit.
Interesting twist.
Yeah. And turns. Sorry, I had to hit that one. Damn, I have to think. I've thought of so many ideas.
It was definitely Val Venus.
Yes, yeah. So okay, yeah, Val Venus. So good. Yeah, that is a fantastic call, dude.
That's a good out. No.
Yeah, I just. Oh man, the way him.
Best impression, worst character.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah, okay. We'll say Val Venus then. So yeah.
I saved you on that one.
You did. I appreciate.
Have you ever had any ideas that didn't pan out that you'd still like to do? What's left in that big brain of yours, Seth?
I've been a big fan recently. Watching some Ring of Honor. There's a wrestler, a luchador character, Rouge. Just awesome character. Like awesome wrestler. I think Lucha Libre is kind of like one type of until recently, because now I have a luchador character, Minute from
yes,
the Sky High Titans, with Uriel Cortez and the Family Keeling. But I had an idea a few years ago to kind of do like a luchador type family, like a trios team. I had it's something that maybe I'll try one day. But he had had so many killer matches with his brother. He goes by Dragon Lee or Ryu Lee in New Japan. They're just tear shit up, like just an amazing brother tandem. I have this luchador family, and I don't remember any of their names, but it was something like that. It would have been like a trios thing that I think I was going to try in Defiance, but then the idea of Team Haas was like, I'd handled them in ACW, but there was kind of more meat to the bones on that as far as that story went. So I went with that.
Sure.
But yeah, maybe I think Lucha Libre is admittedly the fewest type of wrestling. I think it's one of the fewest things I haven't really dipped my toe into until recently. So maybe expand more on that, because it's really fun to kind of write out the high flyers and.
Good deal. Up next is Chris Ross, the boss. What are your thoughts on Simon Landis III?
Oh, okay. So I handled in NBW last year, and he had a really awesome character, Simon Landis. So yeah, the character was fun in the bit of time that I got to work with him before NBW kind of folded around that time. But yeah, he was a good character. He was like the rich EC3-ish type prick. That had a fun gimmick where he could work something into his contract to allow heel shenanigans or something outrageous, but the way he did it was pretty fun. So, good character.
Good way to put yourself over, Chris. What do you think of me?
Piece of shit. No, I'm kidding. Really awesome.
Up next is, speaking of the shit, Everybody Loves Will. And his first question for you, as someone who is written predominantly as a babyface, who has been your inspiration? Good question. Yeah. Writing inspiration.
For sure, yeah. Like more recently, probably some of the best babyface characters I'm trying to think. Like when Damien was here, when he had Eugene Dewey as a face, like he was really good. Murr did awesome work as both Murray brothers, Andy and Cale Murray, especially Cale Murray, was great during his Defiance run. Kind of the never say die, like babyface champions take on all comers. I think once I kind of got into that sort of character, that type of thing was really fun, especially with like Burns, where Burns is the type of guy that wants to challenge himself, so he'll fight anyone, anytime, anywhere, no matter what their style is. And I think that's kind of what's so fun with the character now, is kind of taken from those influences and being like, okay, with his fist title runs, I did a lot of open challenge matches and tried to have him face off against a variety of opponents and things, kind of Bret Hart style. when Bret Hart was a babyface champion, he was really good for that sort of thing. Like, he took on all kinds of people, like the killer matches he had with like 1-2-3 Kid,
Hakushi.
just perfect. Like, just fucking everything he touched was great. So him, Ricky Steamboat was always good as well. Like, I don't think anybody can ever go wrong with checking out anything involving Ricky Steamboat. Like, he was the shit as far as baby faces went. Like, he was awesome.
Absolutely. Great baby faces to model after. I mean, anybody who's been almost a career baby face, it's hard to go wrong there. And yes, Brian, he did mention Bret Hart. What a great. I know you're very excited about that answer.
He's going to leave in all my ums and edits and pauses now because I complimented Bret.
You're fucked because you love Bret Hart. Amazing. Will's second question, which do you prefer to write, heel or face?
So, at this time, the characters I've handled are all faces because I have Oscar Burns. Burns has a protege, Bantam Ryan Batts, who's kind of been like his part-time tag partner / friend, is also a face, and then the Sky High Titans are currently faces as well. So apparently I'm a face all day, every day right now, but I'm actually going to try my hand at a heel here soon. Ooh, intrigue maybe. We've got a new handler coming in, and I'm kind of excited for the stuff we've already come up with. So I'll say I will say for now face, but I'm kind of itching at the chance to write the heel character that's going to be coming in. Hopefully you guys like it, and if not, I'll kill him off after one arc, and we'll forget he ever existed. So.
Okay. Are you mad that my hair is and will always be better than yours?
Nope,
from Will.
Because my family has dealt with male pattern baldness like on started a little bit, so I've just shaved my head bald for the last 8 or 9 years now. So no, I am not. Fuck it.
Fuck it. Of all the feds you've been in, what and who is on your Mount Rushmore in EFEDs?
I did have to think about this one, so I'm glad I read one of the questions ahead. So Mount Rushmore, the buddy of mine I'd worked with for years, like Sean's definitely up there. Seymour Almost, he was a fantastic, well-rounded character, and he was kind of like me. He had so many character ideas. Like, there wasn't anything I don't think he could write convincingly and have so much fun doing. So he's up there. A handler is not in the hobby anymore. Mike Renner. Renner was a guy that actually I kind of learned a lot from. He was the Fed head of the Squared Circle. That gave Sonny.
It's a name I hear often.
He's a guy that he hasn't been in the hobby in a few years, as far as I'm aware. He handled so many great characters, like babyface and heel. He's probably most famous for Joey Malone, Joey's protege, the kleptomaniac Coral Avalon, which was a fun gimmick. He was like a babyface that like stole other people's moves in tribute. So he was a really fun babyface, and then he's probably on the comedy side, he's most famous for a tag team called Mega Job, which were just fucking priceless. Like, he could write comedy, he could write serious matches. Like, there wasn't anything I don't think he couldn't do. He could.
That's awesome. Who else is on that Mount Rushmore?
Let me see.
You need 4.
Yeah, I do. There was a handler who's no longer in the another one who's no longer in the hobby. His name was Ben Morrow, and he handled probably another one of Sonny's rivals, Rook Black. And he was a really just awesome, like, pure writer. As far as like his role plays, when he did role playing, was awesome. He wrote out some really good angles with Rook, and he was a really like interesting, like, psychological type babyface, which I haven't seen too many of those, like very introspective, but really well written. He was a natural foil for Sonny because Sonny was like the loudmouth dick. Rook Black was the silent, mostly silent, pensive, but like when he spoke, like very well spoken type character. So they kind of they worked together really well. And I gotta think of one more. I had those 3 in mind, so I'm like, I had those answers ahead of time. I think my 4th, another handler out of Prime. Sad, all these guys are no longer in the hobby. A guy named Matt Repchak. Linz knows him too, and used to work with him a lot. He handled so many fun characters. He had like a movie star / professional wrestler, because that's how he identified himself, Danny Ferguson, who started out as kind of like Mikey Unlikely-ish, like, even though he's like a movie star. Then he became kind of a serious wrestler because the character did like a Terry Funk biopic, and then he started to learn how to replicate like Terry Funk's wrestling style, and it was such a fun it was a really well told story. He had another character, like an El Generico type character of his own, called El Spiffy with an exclamation point. Spiffy was the shit. You can't have the Spiffy was his gimmick. Like, you can't handle the mango. Like, that was his catchphrase. Like, it's just every bit as ridiculous as it sounds, but he was another one of those guys that, like, he could, at the drop of a hat, he could do comedy, he could do serious stories. You know, he could write a killer, like, knockdown, drag out fight. He could write a good technical match. Like, he was just awesome, and he was a guy I looked up to a lot. But
new question. Do you think Mikey and Brian should add a Man of 1004 Characters t-shirt to the store?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll talk to you about that off air.
That's what's up.
Ross is up next at Rossaron. Who do you think would win if all your characters fought in a Royal Rumble match?
Yeah, I like that question. So I would probably have to give it to, it's either going to be Oscar Burns, like, as the face, gutting it out from beginning to end, or it's going to be Sonny Silver being a complete shithead and, like, camping out under the ring, like watching TV on his phone or whatever, until he thinks, you know, there's one guy left, and then he'll steal it. So it's going to come down to one of, well, no, it's going to be those two, or it'll be Uriel Cortez, just because he's 7'1", 3.5", and 375 pounds. So you can't go against the big guy. So it's going to be one of those three, I think. So yeah, I didn't pick this one.
There you go. Interesting. At Crimson Scott, what is next for Oscar Burns from the Defiant?
And my answer to that is, stay tuned and find out. He's on a kind of a big match losing streak ever since he lost the fist to that asshole Mikey Unlikely. He lost out in a fist title match. He lost out in a unified tag title match. And then most recently, you better have read the show by now, people. If you're Defiance and you're listening, spoiler alert, Gage Blackwood retained the Southern Heritage title. So he's in kind of a title drought right now. So again, stay tuned and find out.
Very good. From Actual Scott, how do you not have burnout? You're like Dean Malenko, only the man of 1,000 characters. Hey-o.
I will say that it's definitely, I've had burnout. Trust me, it's happened more than once.
Oscar burnout?
Okay. That was a good one. I will absolutely give you that. That was great. But yeah, no, it's happened more than once. But I feel like probably most recently, I think since my last return, I don't think, other than Andy Sharp, I haven't really had much in the way of burnout, because I've had a lot of fun with the characters I'm rolling with now. I've had fun with the Sky High Titans and kind of putting that tag team together, which just kind of started off. I had to drop another tag team I was doing, and then I decided to kind of bring the two singles guys together, and then I felt like that was a fun angle that I had a lot of fun doing, and continue to do so to this day, and hopefully you guys enjoy it too.
Absolutely. Roland, 1,004 characters I counted, so Scott went back and edited. Queen Linz, why is Marcus such a bum?
Because he knows I'm going to carry him whether I like it or not.
That's a good one. Tips for people who hate writing matches to make them not so painful to do. Besides finding someone who likes to write matches and have them do it for you.
Yeah. Other than that, I can't help you. If you don't like it, you don't like it. No. I would say YouTube is probably the greatest source of inspiration, because these days there are countless matches you can find with the tip of a finger. You know, if nothing else, you know, find a match that you might like, and you know, maybe find some matches you might like. I feel like I've drawn inspiration from, you know, just if I'm writing a match between these characters, I'll try to find a character that maybe like wrestles similar, or if nothing else, find a really good one of those like 2-minute WWE matches where they do move, finish, and just write that out, and suddenly you're a genius. I might have just given away money.
I think that's most people's secret, writing matches.
Probably, yeah.
Who do you want to see get back in the game that's been gone for a while? Probably your Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah, I would say pretty much every, other than Sean, yeah, I'd say, all the other ones. I'm like, Renner, Matt Rapchak, just if y'all hear this, come back. You guys were awesome. And Renner, the world always needs more Mega Job. Always.
Always. More Mega Job, always. I like that. Mm-hmm. Can we recreate the silver and gold magic again?
I think so. As Linz would put it, intrigue. I believe it is possible. Maybe one day. Absolutely. I think that would be a lot of fun. Especially because just if for anybody that knows, Sonny Silver has a nephew who just got signed on to Defiance's Brazen brand, which is like our version of NXT Developmental. You may see their characters, like Brazen characters, appear on the Defiant shows. He has a shitty little nephew named Archer, so the Silver legacy at one point or another will live on again.
There you have it. I'm excited. As someone who didn't see the original group, I'm excited to see the new one.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
All right. Lindsay's last question, not necessarily with Sonny and LT, mind you. Obviously, that's where you were going with that.
Yeah.
Giant Bilba, I'm not shy in saying I've taken some inspiration from you. Who is it that you've encountered in your past that you've been inspired by to be better?
I'd say a few handlers. So I would say like Murr had like really strong face runs in other places with Andy Murray, Cale Murray, that I think really lent themselves to kind of like how I portray Oscar Burns today. Was a big help. Mike Renner, the handler we talked about on my Mount Rushmore, was probably the most influential to me because like I said, I've always tried to be one of those handlers where I think I can try to do, just about anything as far as like, admittedly my comedy not so good these days, but like serious wrestling, funny segments. I want to be kind of the guy that's remembered for like, oh shit, he was able to do just about anything or handle just about anyone and make it good. So I think those are probably two of my biggest, I would say. And then people like Repcheck and Linz too, like, when I role played against her in Prime, like I'd always try to, it kind of forced me to become a better writer. So I'd come up with these ideas like outside the box and do like these wacky RPs and things like that I remember I had a lot of fun doing at the time. So working with, the saying goes, our iron sharpens iron. I hope I didn't fuck that up, but yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Like working with really good writers makes myself, it challenges me to be a better writer.
Understandable. And Billy's second question, which of your characters do you feel was the biggest missed opportunity?
I would say recently Andy Sharp, because I had a good idea for that heel turn where he was kind of like, he was a big success, and the idea was he would have come back and been like an entitled, like Teddy Hart-ish type of like just shitbag, like did drugs, and I don't think I wrote any of that stuff. I think he ended up coming back, and I feel like I just kind of made him generic cocky heel number 24601 instead of like fleshing out the character some, because he was with the family queuing and they were going to talk for him. But I feel like there was much more I could have done with that story, but just from like, at the time burnout and wanting to phase out some characters at the time, I would say that's probably the most recent example I could think of.
For sure. Okay. Well, that's what we got from the Twitter questions and the Discord questions, Seth. Really enjoy the time talking to you, getting to know you a little bit better. Obviously, we did that in person. I flew into town for work purposes, and we got to hang out and enjoy a great Japanese burger.
Hell yeah. Oh, we had that earlier this week, dude. It was the shit.
Oh, man, I miss it. I had a great time. It was really nice getting to know you, and you're a cool dude. Really appreciate you taking the time to do the podcast for me, and looking forward to beating Oscar Burns again in Defiance soon.
Yeah, at this point, it's pretty much at this point, that's probably going to happen. So yeah, poor guy. He can't win a title match lately to save his life. So yeah, it'll probably happen sooner than later, I'm sure.
Well, very good. I'm excited for it. Hey, before we go, is there anything else you want to put over?
Oh yes, I remember we talked about this. So Brian does a great job putting over Defiance. So I'm gonna take a crack at it as well.
Let's do it.
Defiance, an angle fed boasting 8 years of continuous fantasy wrestling. Defiance offers opportunities for original characters, micros, a standalone website utilizing Backstage 3 script, and a forum hosted on the long-running fwrestling.com, as well as a roster full of some of the most experienced writers in the game. Come see for yourself at defiancewrestling.com. That's defiancewrestling.com.
Awesome.
Shilling it. I'm like, okay, I had to try it. I'm not making fun of him. I'm like, he does such a good job shilling the Defiance. I'm like, okay, I have to take a crack at it as staff. I had to take a crack at it at least one time.
Amazing. So catch that next week on the episode as the Defiance commercial when Brian's ready to be replaced. He's been talking about re-recording commercials, so that's perfect.
Yay, sweet.
Awesome. All right, buddy. Before we go, anything else you want to put over? Anybody else you want to put over?
I'd say just keep checking out Defiance Wrestling. I really feel like, like I said before, I feel like the promotion's getting really hot right now. I feel like everybody's kind of firing on all cylinders right now as far as like creativity. Like it seems like everybody's excited to actually write. And when I see that happen, I feel like that's awesome. And then it kind of inspires me to do more. So, I say just everybody keep at it. We're starting a new arc here very soon. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
All right, man. Thanks so much for joining us here on the EFED podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me, dude.
Oh, man, that was a lot of fun. Really appreciate Seth taking the time to come on the show today and give us a breakdown of the history of all 10,000 characters. Had a good time talking with you guys all today with the question of the week, the spotlight of the week, talking with Seth, and all of the other fun things. If you want to talk to me in the meantime, you can find us over on Twitter at the EFED Podcast, over on the Discord. The link's right there in the Twitter profile. Over on Facebook, just search the EFED Podcast. We're working on a Facebook page so we can get that rolling. And we got much, much more going on, guys. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/EFED Podcast. Shout out to our sponsors, OCWFed.com, JCS, holding it down. Shout out to EWC over at EWC4Life.com. Really appreciate them and their community. We've got a lot of their interviews coming up here shortly, actually. A couple of their guys. So always looking forward to more interaction with those guys. Want to thank AtomicDropcast.com. I'm a great guy. I want to thank me. My other podcast over at AtomicDropcast.com or on the YouTubes, Atomic Dropcast. DefianceWrestling.com. Really appreciate Defiance. One of the best angle feds in the game today. If you're looking for a fun angle fed, check out DefianceWrestling.com. You can get in on the action now and maybe even go up against Mikey Unlikely. Ooh. All right, everybody. For Brian, I'm Mikey. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the EFED Podcast here on the Atomic Dropcast Network, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real.
On Patreon.